Electric cars have been getting more and more popular by the day. In 2020 alone, EV sales grew in Ireland by 16%. This is good news not only for the environment but also from an engineering point of view. It means new boundaries can be pushed. It means cars can be sensible whilst also being quicker than ever. As amazing as this all is, it will leave the true car enthusiast one day longing for a petrol engine.
Hello and welcome back to the DoneDeal YouTube channel. My name's David OC and today we've come to County Clare, to some of Ireland's nicest driving roads, as we have a very special car to review. But before we get into it, make sure to hit the link on the top right hand corner if you'd like to search for cars for sale in Ireland from over 1,000 trusted dealers nationwide. Behind me is a car. It's not electric, however it does have 4 wheels, 5 seats, a windscreen and an engine. And for many people that is enough. A car is a device to take them from A to B. However, this is a Volkswagen Golf GTI Clubsport. And for many people the GTI is more than just a car, and in fact it is somewhat of a motoring icon.
It all started in 1974 when Volkswagen introduced the first generation Golf. It was a milestone for the company as it was effectively replacing the much loved and ever so popular Volkswagen Beetle. And whilst it was exciting, it also presented an opportunity to the brand to make a performance version, the GTI. This was released in June 1976 and it had a fuel-injected 1.6 litre petrol engine capable of up to 182 km per hour. And so started a saga of fabulous high-powered front-wheel drive hatchbacks. A hot hatch, if you will.
And that all leads us to here now today in 2021 with the 8th version of the Volkswagen Golf GTI. And this isn't just any ordinary GTI. In fact, the ordinary GTI is fantastic. However, this is the Clubsport, and it could in fact be the best GTI Volkswagen have ever made. Around town, the GTI drives just like any other Golf, and that's always been the beauty of the GTI. You can drive it as an everyday car. It's not terrible on fuel, it's very comfortable, the suspension's very soft, the dampening is really good, and the 7-speed DSG gearbox is seamless. You genuinely wouldn't know what gear you're in. As I pull up to a junction here now, it just drives like any other Golf. It's fantastic.
As a car to live with day to day, it ticks a lot of boxes. The boot is large, the rear seats fold down, and the ISOFIX points are extremely easily accessible. Not to mention it comes with adaptive cruise control as standard, amongst many other driving creature comforts.
Now that's all well and good, however my guesses are if you've clicked onto this review, you want to know more about the GTI and the Clubsport side of things. Well, let's talk facts and figures. The ordinary GTI comes with about 245 brake horsepower, and that goes to the front wheels through a 2 litre petrol engine. Now I know what you're thinking, 2 litres? That's milk size stuff. However, the Clubsport, this one, it comes with 300 horsepower. 300. It is blisteringly quick. Now all that power is delivered to the front wheels using a 7-speed dual clutch system. It's Volkswagen's DSG gearbox and it is brilliant. Now if you want a manual, you're actually not able to get it in the Clubsport. You'll have to get the original ordinary GTI. However, from my experience, I actually think these inline 4-cylinder engines suit the DSG gearbox a little bit better. In terms of looks, Volkswagen have made the front a lot more aggressive. I get a flare of a bit of a shark. The lights are much more similar to something like a Volkswagen Arteon. You also have a light bar across there at night. And continuing on the light theme, with the Clubsport, they've done away with the fog lights, as that is now an intake, but only on the right hand side. Other things that suggest it's a Clubsport are the decals along the side. The whole car sits 15mm lower. And at the rear, you've got the famous Clubsport spoiler, and the exhausts sit a little bit wider and are also shaped in a more oval fashion. On the inside, there are a couple more things that shout GTI or Clubsport. The first and foremost of those are these bucket seats, which are actually quite comfortable. There's also a GTI steering wheel and a really cool GTI dial that comes up on the center of the virtual cockpit. And everything else in here is very much the exact same as an ordinary Golf. So if you want to see more about that in terms of rear space, boot space, then hit the link on the top right hand corner to watch that review. And all this comes at a price. So starting price of the Volkswagen Golf GTI is about 45,000 euros. This, the Clubsport, that comes in at about 52,000. However, you can of course spec that right up, but that's enough of the boring stuff. Let's go for another drive. Now, when it comes to driving a performance car, there is 4 key factors. Number 1 is handling, number 2 is brakes, number 3 is the exhaust note, and most importantly is the power. Now, let's begin with handling. So we've come here to Corkscrew Hill, which is a very technical piece of road, and it is being devoured by the Clubsport. Partly because of the differential, and also because the suspension's been set up with a little bit of negative camber, meaning it can just be a little bit more aggressive in the bends, and it is really glued to the road. Now, having all that power and being able to go into these corners is one thing, but it needs to be able to stop quickly, and that's where brakes come into play. Now the brakes on this, they're a little bit bigger than the regular GTI, and they're also a little bit lighter, meaning the unsprung mass weight is much better. And that leads us into exhaust notes, and if I do a little shift down, you'll hear it's pretty good in this. And normally this Golf engine, this 2-litre turbo unit, it actually doesn't have a great noise from factory, but that Clubsport exhaust really does come into its own. And that leads us into our very last unit, which is power. Now, power is not something the Clubsport is short of. In fact, we said it earlier, it's 300 brake horsepower, and that is a lot. You're probably thinking, how on earth does it put all that power down? And to be honest, I'm kind of wondering that too. I mean, you would understand it maybe if it was on Cup 2s or Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, but it's on a random set of Bridgestones, and it is literally glued to the ground. It's like it's got suction cups as tyres. It's insane. Now, this is probably due to the fact that it's got something called a Vaq differential. It's a limited slip diff, and what it does is it means that it can really put the power to where it needs to be. And it is good, but I didn't think it would be this good. It's absolutely phenomenal. To elaborate on how that diff works, it's very complicated, but effectively, if you imagine the haldex system that you see in the 4-wheel drive Golf Ors or any 4Motion vehicle for that matter, it's a very similar situation, except instead of putting the power between the front and the rear, it's between the left and the right wheel. And that is a very basic explanation of it, but I don't think you need to know more. Just know it works, and it works very well. Yes, I said it, the word haldex, and that probably sparked in your mind the question of, would you just prefer to get a Golf Or over a Clubsport? Well, let's just talk about 2 reasons why I wouldn't. Number 1 is, in Ireland, there's 10k in the difference. 10,000 euros. think of all the things you could spend 10,000 euros on. First and foremost of maybe tyres, because you're going to be running through those front tyres. But 10 grand, it's incomparable in pricing. But the second one is far more important, and it's something that I have a lot of experience in. So to give you a bit of reference, I actually owned a Mark 7 Golf GTI and a Mark 7 Golf R. Now the reason I went from the GTI to the R was because it was the next logical step, but also to get that increase in power. However, when I got there, I was a little bit disappointed for a very, very strange reason, and it was that the Golf R was too good. And you're probably thinking, but why? How? That doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, but effectively, whatever you wanted the Golf R to do, it would do it. And that took away from the driving pleasure a little bit. It almost felt somewhat like a Tesla. Whereas in a GTI, that unpredictability of the wheels spinning up or not knowing exactly how well it's going to grip coming in or out of a corner, that, the unknown, is potentially why I prefer the Clubsport. The element of not knowing exactly how something's going to go can actually be sometimes the interesting part, the mystery, some would say. So there you have it, the Mark 8 GTI Clubsport. Potentially the best GTI ever made. I don't know, I'll leave that one up to you. I definitely think if it was available in a manual for those truly passionate drivers, and yes, couple flaws, the infotainment system, it isn't great. The lane assist would drive you bonkers. The seats aren't as comfortable as in the Mark 7.5, but it is an incredible, and I mean incredible, driver's car. The GTI Clubsport, it isn't a hot hatch, it's the hot hatch.